There is a version of you that already knows exactly what needs to be done. It doesn't hesitate. It doesn't argue. It doesn't look for permission. But there is another version. The one that always shows up when it's time to act. The one that delays. The one that replaces discipline with distraction. The one that chooses scrolling over building. The one that convinces you tomorrow will be better while stealing today from you. And every time you obey that weaker version, something inside you erodes quietly. Not through one dramatic failure, but through thousands of small betrayals you never notice in the moment. A postponed workout, a skipped decision, a goal pushed next week again and again. That is how a life collapses, silently, repeatedly, without warning. So the real question was never whether you are capable of change. You already are. The question is how long you will keep negotiating with the part of you that refuses to grow. Because within 30 days, a man doesn't just improve. He either repeats himself, or he rebuilds himself completely. And the blueprint for that decision was already proven long ago by Miyamoto Musashi. Most men believe transformation is complicated. They assume it requires more information, more strategies, more inspiration, more time. So they keep collecting knowledge like it will eventually replace action. They keep waiting for the right mood, the right Monday, the right moment when everything feels aligned. But history never supported that illusion. Miyamoto Musashi did not build mastery through motivation. He did not depend on emotional highs or external encouragement. He built it through ruthless simplicity, stripping life down to what could not be negotiated with. No excuses when it was inconvenient. No hesitation when it was difficult. No emotional debate when action was required. Only discipline, repeated so consistently that it stopped feeling like a choice and became identity. And if you study his life closely, something becomes unsettlingly clear. He never waited for conditions to improve before he acted. He never paused for life to feel fair. He never asked for comfort before committing to growth. He simply moved forward, while everything around him remained uncertain. He did not try to make life easier. He trained himself to become harder than the life he was facing. And that is the part most people avoid understanding, because it removes all excuses. It removes delay. It removes negotiation. And that is exactly what this is about. Not inspiration that fades in hours. Not motivation that depends on mood. Not theories that collapse under pressure. But structure. Simple, repetitive, unavoidable structure. 5 rules. 30 days. 1 transformation that does not ask for permission. Chapter 1. Wake before your excuses. You do not lose your life in one dramatic collapse. You do not wake up one day and suddenly become weak. Weakness is more patient than that. It builds itself quietly, in moments so small you don't even label them as decisions. You lose your life in small negotiations. Repeated, daily, invisible compromises with yourself. The alarm rings. And that is where the first battle begins. Not against the world, not against other people, but against your own excuse-making mind. And almost every time, you don't fight it. You negotiate. 5 more minutes. Just a little more sleep. I'm too tired. I'll start tomorrow. Today doesn't really matter anyway. And in that moment, nothing looks serious. It feels harmless, even reasonable. But something important just happened without your awareness. You surrendered your morning. And with it, you surrendered the tone of your entire day. Miyamoto Musashi would see this not as rest, but as the first defeat of the day. Because in his philosophy, there is no small delay. There is only training. The moment you delay discipline, you are not resting. You are rehearsing weakness. You are teaching your mind that comfort has authority over you. And what you repeat becomes your identity. For 30 days, this rule is simple. Almost brutally simple. Wake up before comfort can speak. Before excuses wake up. Before negotiation becomes possible. Not because mornings are mystical. Not because early waking is morally superior. But because obedience to comfort is the quiet root of every failure that follows. If you cannot command your morning, you will not command your life. Chapter 2. Kill distraction. Modern men are not failing because they lack intelligence. They are not failing because they lack potential, talent, or opportunity. They are failing because they cannot hold their own attention. And in a world like this, attention is no longer just focus. It is control. Every notification is a small interruption of your direction. Every vibration pulls you out of thought. Every endless scroll quietly weakens your ability to stay present with anything difficult. It feels harmless in the moment. Just a quick check. Just a few seconds. Just a break. But what it really does is fracture you. Every distraction splits your mind into smaller pieces, until nothing inside you stays still long enough to build anything meaningful. And a fractured mind cannot build a strong life, because strength requires continuity, and continuity requires control. Without control, you don't build, you react. You don't create, you consume. You don't lead your life, you follow whatever appears next on the screen. Miyamoto Musashi understood something most people today refuse to accept. Noise is not neutral. It is influence. It is erosion. It is a slow removal of inner direction. That is why he trained in silence. Not because silence was comfortable, not because silence was peaceful or aesthetic, but because silence removes distortion. It strips away everything unnecessary until only truth remains. Your mind, your intention, and your discipline. In silence, there is nowhere to hide from yourself. And that is exactly why most people avoid it. For 30 days, this rule is simple, but it is not easy. Remove unnecessary noise. Not just from your environment, but from your attention. Because clarity is never created by adding more information. It is created by removing interference. And if your mind is constantly occupied, your life will always remain unconsciously controlled. Chapter 3. Train your body daily. A weak body does not stay contained as something physical. It does not remain in the muscles, or the lungs, or the joints alone. It spreads. It leaks into everything you do without permission. It becomes weak decisions made under pressure. It becomes weak discipline when resistance shows up. It becomes a weak mindset that avoids discomfort at all costs. Slowly, the body starts dictating the boundaries of your life. What you will attempt, what you will avoid, what you will quit before it even begins. Miyamoto Musashi understood something most men today completely ignore. The body is not separate from the mind. The body trains the mind, not the other way around. So when the body is pushed into discomfort intentionally, the mind is forced to adapt. It learns endurance. It learns patience under strain. It learns that discomfort is not danger, it is instruction. And over time, something shifts internally. You stop reacting like someone who avoids effort, and start responding like someone who survives it. For 30 days, the rule is simple. Move daily. Run when you don't feel like it. Lift when you feel tired. Walk when your mind says skip today. Train even when there is no motivation present. Not for appearance, not for aesthetics, not for validation or comparison, but for identity. Because the purpose is not to look stronger. The purpose is to become someone who cannot be easily stopped by resistance. And every repetition carries a decision inside it. Every set, every step, every moment you choose effort over avoidance. Each one is a vote. A vote that says, I do not quit. Chapter 4. Speak less, observe more. Weak men feel an urgent need to explain everything they think, feel, and intend. They speak to justify themselves. They speak to be understood. They speak to prove they are present, relevant, or right. Strong men do not operate that way. Strong men observe everything first. They understand that speech is not free, it has cost. Every unnecessary word is a release of attention, and attention, once released, cannot be fully recovered. The more you talk, the less you are actually seeing. Because while your mouth is active, your awareness is divided. You are not fully in the room, you are performing in it. And performance always reduces perception. Miyamoto Musashi did not move through life as someone reacting to everything around him. He moved as someone studying it first. Before he engaged an opponent, he observed them. Not just their movement, but their rhythm. Not just their strength, but their hesitation. Before he trusted his own response, he studied himself. Because he understood something most people never question. Your first instinct is not always truth, it is habit. And habits can be wrong. For 30 days, this rule is simple. Stop reacting instantly. Do not rush to fill silence. Do not answer every impulse with immediate expression. Watch more. Listen without preparing your response. Observe people without rushing to label them. Speak less, not to become silent, but to become intentional. Think longer, not to become slow, but to become accurate. Because awareness is not created through speed. It is created through restraint. And in a noisy mind, awareness collapses. But in controlled silence, awareness expands. Chapter 5. Do one hard thing daily. Your life is not primarily shaped by what you do. It is shaped, more quietly and more accurately, by what you consistently avoid. Because avoidance is still action. It is just action turned inward against your own growth. The conversation you keep postponing. The task you keep pushing later. The discomfort you instinctively escape the moment it appears. These are not small habits. They are structural decisions that define the boundaries of your life. Over time, what you avoid becomes larger than what you face. And a life built on avoidance slowly becomes smaller without you noticing. Miyamoto Musashi did not build strength by seeking comfort between battles. He did not grow by waiting for ideal conditions or emotional readiness. He built himself by walking directly toward difficulty. Not once, not occasionally, but repeatedly, until difficulty stopped being something he feared and became something he understood. Because to him, strength was never a moment. It was a pattern of behavior under pressure. For 30 days, this rule is simple, but it confronts everything in you that resists change. Do one uncomfortable thing every day. Not when motivation appears. Not when confidence arrives. Not when circumstances feel aligned. But especially when none of those things are present. Send the message you've been avoiding. Start the task you've been postponing. Face the responsibility you've been negotiating with. Not because it feels good, but because it builds something inside you that comfort never can. Courage is not an emotion that appears before action. It is a result of repeated exposure to discomfort without retreat. It is repetition under pressure. And over time, repetition becomes identity. If you follow these 5 rules for 30 days, you will not suddenly become a different person overnight. There will be no dramatic moment where everything feels fixed. What you will notice first is something far more subtle. Not perfection. Not perfection of discipline, thought, or execution, but awareness. A quiet sharpening of perception that begins to expose things you used to live inside without noticing. You will start to see your patterns more clearly. The same excuses you repeat under pressure. The same avoidance that appears in different forms but leads to the same outcome. The same weak points you normally rationalize instead of confronting. The same habits that were quietly steering your decisions while you believed you were in control. And that realization changes something fundamental. Because most people do not fail due to lack of knowledge. They fail because they do not see themselves clearly enough to change. But once a man begins to see clearly, he cannot remain the same without feeling the contradiction inside him. He becomes aware of the gap between what he is and what he allows himself to be. And that gap becomes uncomfortable enough that ignoring it is no longer possible. Because ignorance is what allows weakness to survive unnoticed. It thrives in repetition without awareness. It grows in habits that are never questioned. But awareness interrupts that process. It exposes what was previously automatic. And once something is exposed, it can no longer grow in silence. That is where transformation begins, not in motivation, but in clarity. Miyamoto Musashi never promised ease. He never suggested that discipline would feel comfortable or emotionally rewarding in the moment. He promised something far more demanding and far more valuable. Clarity through discipline. A life stripped of illusion, built through repeated action under control. And that same truth applies here. Not as inspiration, but as structure, as consequence, as a standard you either live by or slowly drift away from. So here is the real challenge. Do not just listen to this. Do not save it for later. Do not wait for motivation. Start today. Pick one rule. Apply it immediately, and then repeat it tomorrow. Because in 30 days, you will not become a different person overnight, but you will become undeniable proof that you are no longer the same man who used to delay his life.